You think you know what a monster looks like. You expect the shadows, the obvious deformity, the warning sign taped across the forehead. But the most terrifying killers in history are the ones who walk towards you in daylight, the ones who make you second-guess your own fear. This journey into the true levels of serial killers begins at the surface, where the predator is at their most functional, most effective, and most deceptively human. This is the domain of Level 1, the Charismatic Architect. You are looking at a master manipulator, a person who operates not on impulse, but on a chilling, detailed blueprint. Think of Ted Bundy, the man who weaponized his charm. He didn't use force initially. He used a cast, a limp, a smooth line, or a plea for help. He was the perfect con artist, turning your innate human decency against you. His method was the ultimate form of predatory efficiency. He researched his hunting grounds, refined his techniques, and, most critically, understood the psychology of his victims. He wasn't killing for rage. He was killing for power. The power to make an intelligent, functioning person choose to enter his lethal orbit. When the struggle began, it was already too late. You had already made the choice he wanted you to make, and that was the true source of his thrill. He was a chameleon, a law student, a political aide, shedding his skin with every new state he crossed, leaving a trail of disappearances that defies simple explanation. His crimes weren't committed by a deranged hermit. They were orchestrated by a perfectly organized member of society who viewed human connection as a disposable tool. But the moment a killer demands recognition, their nature shifts. You move up, or perhaps down, to Level 2, the Egotistical Sadist. The organization is still there, the planning is still meticulous, but now the crime is committed not just for internal satisfaction, but for public acclaim. This is the world of Dennis Rader, the BTK killer. His murders were careful, planned acts of torture, designed to satisfy a profound sexual sadism. However, his most consuming need was not the act itself, but the fear it generated. He was obsessed with the media coverage, with the police investigation, with the game of cat and mouse he forced the community to play. You were no longer just a victim. You were a piece in his elaborate, agonizing puzzle. He took enormous risks, sending letters, poems, and taunting communications, because the terror he inflicted on Wichita was his masterpiece. He hid in plain sight for decades, a church official and a family man, his desire for control and recognition so intense that he ultimately revealed himself simply to prove his own genius. The terror of this novel is knowing that the man you sat next to at a town meeting, the man who was so organized, was secretly laughing at you, seeing his community as nothing more than a stage for his dark spectacle. This is the calculated, controlled evil that proves intelligence is sometimes the greatest threat of all. You've seen how the organized killer uses charm and ego to manipulate the world outside themselves. Now, we descend into a deeper, far more disturbing territory, where the drive for murder ceases to be about external control and becomes a suffocating internal compulsion. The predator stops seeking the world's attention and begins to construct a private, self-contained universe of horror. This is the realm where the killer's function in society collapses inward, replaced by a monstrous need that must be served. We begin with Level 3, the Community Monster. You might call him the ultimate hypocrite. He's no smooth talker like Bundy. His power comes from his proximity and position. Think of John Wayne Gacy, the local contractor, the man dressed up as Pogo the Clown for charity events. He was a pillar, a friendly face, someone who volunteered to entertain children. His ability to blend in, to maintain that veneer of normalcy despite the monstrous activity below his floorboards, makes him profoundly terrifying. He used his home as his hunting ground, his basement as his burial site. His victims, often young men seeking work or vulnerable runaways, were easily lured because Gacy was a fixture, a trustworthy adult in a position of minimal authority. The horror of this level isn't the act of killing, but the chilling realization that the monster you fear is the man you wave to every morning. You were safe from the boogeyman in the woods, only to be utterly betrayed by the friendly neighbor. His crimes were acts of sexual sadism and rage, but they were carried out with the shocking audacity of a man who believed his social standing would forever shield him from suspicion. He was an entire hidden graveyard living on a quiet, tree-lined street. The internal shift accelerates radically at level 4, the hedonistic sadist. Here, the crime moves beyond just murder and enters the territory of possession and perverse desire. This is the level of Jeffrey Dahmer. His need wasn't for public recognition or even the thrill of the chase. It was for the ultimate, permanent control over another person. His initial killings were failures, messy attempts to satisfy a fixation. He escalated to necrophilia, cannibalism, and bizarre attempts at chemical preservation, all methods of trying to keep his victims with him forever. Dahmer's apartment became a sealed psychological laboratory. He didn't just murder, he conducted horrific, obsessive experiments driven by a crippling fear of abandonment and a deep-seated need for passive, compliant companionship. His intelligence wasn't used for meticulous planning in the world like Bundy's. It was used to execute increasingly complex and degrading acts within the four walls of his own apartment. The victim at this level is entirely depersonalized, reduced to an object of a desperate, consuming fantasy. You realize at level 4 that the greatest threat is not the violence of the moment, but the slow, terrifying decay of a mind that is so utterly broken it can only find solace in destruction and consumption. The motive is purely internal, insatiable, and fundamentally inhuman. You have witnessed the predators who use the mask of normalcy and those who retreat into a world of personal fixation. But a truly elevated form of evil requires planning that transcends the individual act. It requires building an entire system designed for slaughter. This is where the serial killer stops being merely a hunter and becomes an engineer of death. The methods become less about the thrill of the moment and more about the efficiency and scale of the killing. We move to the chilling ingenuity of level 5, the architect of industry. To understand this killer, you must look back to the late 19th century and the figure of H. Holmes. This man didn't just choose his victims, he constructed an environment where survival was mathematically impossible. His Murder Castle in Chicago was a 3-story testament to premeditated depravity, built specifically to capture, torture, and dispose of human beings. He incorporated secret passageways, staircases that led nowhere, soundproof rooms, sealed vaults, and gas lines that allowed him to asphyxiate guests remotely. When a victim perished, gravity did the rest, sending their body down a hidden chute to the basement, where acid vats and a crematorium awaited. Holmes's motives were a cold calculation of sadism and profit. He would lure victims with promises of jobs or housing during the World's Fair, murder them, and then sell their skeletons to medical schools. His process was terrifyingly transactional. His crimes were not committed in a burst of passion or a moment of rage, but as an ongoing business model. The profound horror of Level 5 is realizing that the predator isn't merely hunting you. They've designed the building you're standing in to be your tomb. They've planned every angle of your final moments before you even cross the threshold. Just as terrifying, but completely different in expression, is the next escalation, Level 6, the Visionary Anarchist. This killer shuns organization and system building entirely, choosing instead to be an agent of pure, indiscriminate chaos. This is the realm of Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker. Where Holmes was meticulous, Ramirez was a whirlwind of unpredictable violence. You couldn't define his victim type. He attacked men, women, children, the elderly, rich, poor, across wide geographical distances in Southern California. His only common thread was the demonic vision he claimed drove him. He saw himself as a servant of Satan. His crimes were messy, driven by rage, sexual deviance, and a compulsion to terrify the masses. He didn't just break into homes, he broke the collective feeling of safety in an entire region. The fear he created was universal, precisely because it was random. You could lock your doors, but you couldn't lock your windows. You could hide your identity, but you couldn't hide your existence. His power lay in his sheer, utter lack of pattern, and his capacity for escalating brutality. The distinction here is stark. One killer engineers a static death machine. The other is the dynamic, unpredictable force of destruction itself. Both represent the pinnacle of premeditated and chaotic evil, setting the stage for the final, terrifying level. Now, you must confront the subtle, yet equally terrifying distinction between killers whose motives are born of psychosis and those whose methods suggest a chilling professionalism, the ones who leave behind nothing but questions. This chapter explores the predators who either lose touch with reality or become so efficient they almost defy identification. The line between Level 6, the Visionary Anarchist, and the next level is often thin, defined by the degree of their internal delusion. At Level 7, the mandated monster, the predator's actions are fully governed by voices or visions they believe are real. This killer operates under a delusion of a higher purpose, be it divine instruction or demonic command, and their victims are merely props in a grand cosmic battle. While Ramirez claimed this mantle, the true level 7 killer is genuinely and severely psychotic, making them incredibly difficult to profile because their motives are entirely internal and nonsensical to the outside world. Their acts can be ritualistic, symbolic, and utterly without practical motive, defying the psychological expectations set by the need for power, sex, or money. You are dealing with an individual for whom reality has fractured, making their violence unpredictable and their signature illogical. They aren't trying to hide. They are performing a duty dictated by their broken mind. The contrast this profound internal collapse with the cold, functional efficiency of level 8, the tactical assassin. This killer elevates the organized predator to a new degree of detachment, acting less like a sadist and more like a contract killer operating without the thrill of a personal connection. Their targets are chosen not for psychological gratification, but often for financial gain or professional convenience. Think of Dr. Harold Shipman, who systematically murdered hundreds of his patients over decades. His motive wasn't the thrill of the hunt or sexual compulsion. It was the godlike control over life and death, and often the subsequent manipulation of wills and finances. Shipman used his professional access and medical knowledge, tools that should have saved lives, to execute his victims with clinical, untraceable precision. He blended perfectly, his victims being elderly or vulnerable people whose deaths were often expected. The fear of this level is realizing that the predator doesn't look like a fiend, but rather the person you trust most with your life. The signature is not blood or torture. It is the absence of suspicion. Their success depends entirely on their ability to minimize the emotional component of the crime, turning murder into a calculated, almost mundane action. You realize that a killer motivated by such cold convenience can operate for a lifetime, hidden by the very systems designed to protect you. You have descended through the levels of pure malice, from the slick facade of the architect to the utter internal chaos of the visionary. You've recognized the silent treachery of the community monster and the clinical efficiency of the tactical assassin. But the final, crushing truth is this: these levels are merely humanity's desperate attempt to build a wall around the incomprehensible. We classify them, we study their pathology, we assign them a rank, all in the hope of anticipating the next one. Yet, with every killer, the boundaries blur, the signatures change, and the methods evolve. You can lock your doors, you can check the shadows, but you cannot outrun the quiet realization that the true nightmare is always the person you never even saw coming. Thank you for watching.